Hello, everyone, and welcome to our initiatives webinar. My name is Frank Ziemba. I'm a senior consultant and trainer at Spider Strategies. Here's a picture of me along with my email address. Also shown is our education email, which is learn@spiderstrategies.com. Quickly, just a couple of webinar logistics. First, this webinar is being recorded and will eventually be made available to everybody. All attendees are currently muted and will remain so throughout the entire session. However, if you have any questions during the session, you can post them here and we'll either respond during the session or we'll get back to you after. Next, I'd like to quickly cover our agenda. We're going to be working exclusively with initiatives, explaining when and how to use them, and then leveraging them in reports, dashboards, and as measures. I'm going to start with a finished example showing how initiatives can be leveraged and then walk you through how to build it from the ground up. Okay, with that, let's jump right into QuickScore. With my apologies to our Scoreboard customers, please note that the displays will look a little different from what you're used to, but most of the functionality will be exactly the same. So initiatives are short-term projects to help reach a goal, typically to improve performance. For example, I might be the head of marketing and be responsible for running advertising campaigns. And my main goal might be generating a high number of ad clicks. I could create a measure like we see here for ad clicks, which I've already got selected. I could define a goal, and you get a snapshot of what I've defined, maybe 1,500 across a continuous period of time. And that would be my goal per month. And then what I can do is start loading actual values by month using update. And I'm not going to get into any of that today. We have covered things of that nature as far as updating metrics in a prior session. So keep an eye out for that if you're not familiar with it. Okay, so under dashboards, I might then build something like this dashboard I've put together called ad clicks. And from here, I can closely track perhaps the actual, which is in navy blue line here, versus the goal, as I mentioned, was that 1,500 value month by month. Now, if I start to witness a continuous downward trend like I'm showing here for the year of 2019, this might be a perfect time for me to step in and take some sort of action here. And what we're noticing actually is in the month of December, we hit a point of red for the first time in a long time here, at least anything that's visible on screen. So the question now might be is what can I or what should I do to reverse this trend? And after brainstorming, I might decide that if we can improve our ad campaign and perhaps refine our target audience, we can increase our ad clicks, which is this measure here, which will hopefully increase our leads and ultimately our sales. Now under Foundation, there's a section called Initiatives. I'll switch over to that. And from here, I could create a campaign to increase quantity of ad clicks, which I've already got selected here. Beneath what we call an initiative, I can create tasks. I have these check marks here, or I can create milestones, which is that diamond-shaped icon there. And both of those can be used to help achieve the initiative. For example, I might come up with a game plan to have my colleague Tom spend the month of January, so January of 2020, thoroughly researching an appropriate ad headline and target audience. And what I'll do is grant him $2,500 to complete each of those tests. I'll just click back on ad headline for a second there. I might also establish a milestone date of February 15th, see here, to meet with Tom to discuss his findings on those on the ad campaign, and then ultimately make a final determination of what the ad headline should be and target audience. Now, once I have the entire initiative defined with budgets and timelines set, I can turn things over to Tom to perform the research and keep me posted on his progress. He can do that via status updates, where for each task, he can enter a budget spent to date along with the percent complete. For example, let me go back to research ad headline here. And if I scroll down a bit, there's an option called status updates. And anything that's already been entered will be visible on screen here. In this case, I see two entries, one that Tom had posted on January 16th and one at the end of month of January. Now, once those entries are put through, what I'll see up at the top is either green or red for being on schedule and on budget. In this case, we were in the green on both. Now this next one, if we take a look at it, not so good, okay. This one was behind schedule and over budget. And if we take a look at the next one, we'll notice that these numbers actually balance themselves out perfectly in my perfect world here. So if we go to the milestone, we'll actually see that we're perfectly on track with what we had planned to be for the entire initiative. And we were on budget for that as well. Okay, so let's assume that we did connect. Tom did his research in January. Middle of February here, we had our luncheon. We put together a game plan as far as a go forward plan. And now we're to a point of tracking that maybe even a little bit more in depth than what I'm showing you here in this particular screen. So I do have a couple alternatives. I can just keep clicking around as far as these different options that I've been showing you here. Alternatively, I can get into some of the other places of the product here. And one of those places is charts and reports. So I could have built an initiatives report like we see here to track it. And you see that there's a number of columns that are part of this report. This is an out-of-the-box report with columns that are fixed here. And what I can do, if I scroll through this, I can look at things from the initiative perspective. And if I want to focus in on a particular task, I can scroll down. As we had mentioned before, there was one task called Research Target Audience. That might have been the one that I was looking to track very closely here, since it's sitting in the red. And maybe from this list here, the key columns that we're tracking is budget spent to date and percent complete. Now I can do this after the fact. So right now we're in May, and I can track to see what the performance is like a few months later, how things transpired. Alternatively, I could have been tracking this in January as the initiative was going forward, and of course in February as we were completing things. So this is one place where I can track what's going on with the initiative. Another place is under dashboards. So I'm going to go back to the place where I was before, where I was tracking the ad clicks measure. What I could do is maybe put together a different dashboard view, which is up at the top, quite similar to the graph that I just showed you. Okay, so at the very top there, I've got a similar graph for ad clicks, again, tracking actual in navy blue versus goal in the dark green there. And the only difference with this is that this one, instead of just focusing on the poor performance year of 2019, where I had the graph going from January to December, in this case, what I'm doing is tracking halfway through that prior year. And what I'm looking to do is focus in on how are things going since we enacted the initiative starting in January, and then ultimately we started putting it into action in the middle of February there. And the question is basically, how are things going before it, and how are things going after it? Now, with this layout that we can see here, There's a lot I can tell just by looking up at the graph at the top there. So I can see that, yeah, things were going abysmal as far as performance going through the end of last year, even into the first month of this year. Thank goodness we started this initiative. We decided to act on that at the end of 2019. We reached our low point, and at this point now, as soon as we started enacting this initiative, what we can see here is the performance trending nicely up. And ultimately what we're looking here is, well, not only are we trending up, but in the month of May, we are now trending in the green for the first time in a long time. All right, so you can see these little dots on the display here. That's the first point where has been in the green, and at least anything that's visible here. Now, if you're familiar with the product here, I can toggle back and forth. So if I wanted to go back, I know in my head when that last performance point was in green. It happened to be all the way in January of 2019 was the last time that we've seen performance like we're seeing now in the current month of May of 2020. So let me go back to the current month and take a look at some of the items down at the bottom there. So we've confirmed things are looking pretty good as far as the measure is concerned. Other things that we can incorporate with this dashboard is things like a timeline widget. And you'll see I've got that set up at the bottom left here. And with this, we can track it. So basically, it's a similar view to what we had looked at before on the initiatives panel. There is the ability to get into like a Gantt chart view on that side of the house as well. But within here, you can add what's called a timeline widget, and you can focus in on any item of this. If you want to look at the initiative on the whole, what I can do is just click on that bar here. I can get a feel for things like what we had seen on that prior screen in initiatives, where it was either red or green for being on schedule and on budget. So the initiative on the whole is looking great. Some other tricks with this that I'll just highlight to you now is the layout of this initiative, or timeline, again, as we're calling it in the product here. Notice how I got this laid out right around that time of when that initiative ended or was enacted here. So I could have moved this maybe over just a little bit since it was put through in the middle of February there. But we can play around with some tricks with the layout here. We can say, hey, this is all the performance before this initiative was enacted. And look how great we're doing after it, okay? So there's a couple ways to lay out this dashboard to just enhance the view of your users, and maybe you're the main user of this dashboard, maybe upper management, and things of that nature here. So just some tricks to work with this and lay things out to communicate as effectively as you can what's happening with this initiative here. Now in the bottom right, if you don't like the layout and that's not painting a clear enough picture, you can of course incorporate notes. So in the bottom right here, I've got a note laying out my findings. Maybe I spent hours researching how things were coming along, and I put together a nice little synopsis there saying, hey, in May, we've hit 1,500 ad clicks for the first time since January 2019. Basically, the stuff that I communicated a couple minutes back there. Okay, so that is kind of like a grand tour of working through from the scorecards world, building up a measure, loading in some numbers, seeing that the performance isn't doing so hot. So that was going down this path here as far as just tracking the measure. And it, like I said, we got to a point where we noticed that things are getting alarming. Why don't we put forth an initiative? I walked you down that path, and then I walked you through some tools to help analyze that initiative. Now, what I'm going to do is walk you through from the ground up and explain how all this was put together. Okay, so instead of just seeing the finished product, let's take a look. Well, how did you actually do that? So I'm not going to walk you through building up a measure. Again, that's something we've covered in a prior session. So the first thing that I showed you was the fact that I've got a measure built called ad clicks. It's just as simple as creating a new scorecard item, calling it something like ad clicks, and then loading in some numbers by clicking update. All right, so let's park that side of the house for now. And again, if you need to refer back to a prior session, please do. But everything else I'll walk you through here. So the next step is to, again, go to the initiatives section underneath Foundation. And to build up a initiative, what you need to do is work your way to the top part of this section here. And there's something called New Initiative Item. I'll click on that. And at a minimum here, as far as needing to type something to get through this particular item, I need to type a name. And I'm going to keep things as simple as possible here. So previously, this would have been our increased quantity of ad clicks. I don't want to have a exact duplicate now. I just want to differentiate it a little bit. So I'm just going to keep it generic. So you can kind of see what step that we're on as we're going here. So the name, I'm just going to call it a generic value of initiative. That could have been anything. Now, on the top right, there is a critical option called type that I need to be mindful of. And you'll notice that this is where those icons that I mentioned before come into play. So you'll notice that initiative kind of has this 3-dot icon here, the check mark for the task, and then the diamond for the milestone. And for now, I'm happy with the default of leaving that as an initiative. So as easy as it can be on that side. Now, the next question is, are you going to have sub-items beneath this initiative or not? Meaning, are you going to have a subtask, a second subtask, a milestone? You don't have to have those items, okay? So you could just have an initiative defined and basically be an all-comprising item for itself. Now, what I'm going to walk you through is the more challenging one, meaning I'm going to not keep it as simple as I can by just defining a start date, due date for the initiative and having it comprise everything in itself. I am going to walk you through these sub-items here. So with that said, what I'm actually going to do is leave start date, due date, and total budget blank for that item. And I'm going to let that build up from basically the tree, if you will, underneath that. Okay, so these items I'm going to leave alone. I could assign or put in a value for a description. So something that, of course, since I put a generic initiative value, putting a description for this might be a great idea here, but I'll just leave that blank for the sake of time. I could also assign a user or a group to the initiative on the whole, okay? So for this case, I'm just gonna leave that alone for now, but what I would probably do if I'm the person running this initiative, I would at least assign it to myself. Maybe there's other members of my team that I want to assign that to. And once I'm happy with the way this looks, I will click create. So what you'll notice with this, if you're more familiar with the scorecard side, when you select new scorecard item, you'll see an exact type of behavior that we're seeing here. So I've created an initiative, and now what the product is assuming is that I've got a second initiative to build at this point. And that's not always the case, all right? So in this case, no, I've only got one initiative that I'm looking to build. If I want to build off of that initiative to get that tree that we see at the top, what I need to do is click onto that, and you'll see that it's switched to a color of yellow on screen there. So essentially now I'm ready to either edit this item or build off of it. And I'm going to look to build off of it. And what I'm going to do is select, again, the same option, new initiative item. All right, so in the prior example, I put through 2 tasks, and for the sake of time here, I'm just gonna illustrate the point by typing one or creating one task. And again, I'll keep a generic name of task. All right, so that would be my name. Now, notice up at the top right now, I've got some work to do. So if this is going to be a subtask of that initiative, I do need to switch the type to the appropriate selection there. And you'll notice that I've switched it to task. Now, if you've gone through these steps correctly, meaning that I highlighted the initiative and then selected new initiative item, I then built the task and then I switched the type to task. Notice that when I did that switch, this automatically indented itself to be part of this hierarchy, if you will, okay? So you can potentially see yourself having had no effect there if I had switched this. If I see that's still not indented, it probably means that you didn't go through the steps of highlighting this initiative first before you built the initiative item there. Okay, so there's something to keep an eye out for there. Now this time I'm going to do a bit more work with this task. So the question is, when do I want this particular task to start? And you'll see it's pretty intuitive to work through this. Just click in that section. Maybe I want this task to have started the 1st of the month. The question then is when do I want this task to end? And just like we saw before with my ad campaign, I had each of those tasks running for 1 month, January 1 through January 31st. I'll keep a similar idea here where I've got that spanning 1 month there. Okay, the next question is how much of a budget do I want to allot for this task? And previously what I had done was 2,500 for the ad headline, 2,500 for the target audience. I'll just sum both of those two values up here to give me a grand total of 5,000. And again, I've consolidated that down to one task here. Okay, next, this time I am going to take the time out to assign this task just so you can get a feel for that, for how that works here. So all I need to do here is click within the add user or group section. You'll see that there's a list of all the either groups or users in my system. In my little simplistic world here, I've only got a couple users defined, and I'm just going to bother somebody else with this task of working through this for the month of May, and I'm going to bother Tom by clicking on his name there. And if I click away, you'll see that I have successfully added him there. Now, I can add multiple users. I can go back to start typing here, this box, add myself, add somebody else if I had other users in my system. But for now, I'm just going to keep it simplistic with just that one user there. All right, so if that looks good to me, my last step is to click Create. Okay, so you'll see that same cascading behavior. Once you click Create, we're going to assume that you're looking to now build a second task. Happened to be true earlier in this other example. Well, for now, I'm saying, no, I'm done with tasks. I'm good with that. What I want to do now is just walk through the concept of milestone. So again, I need to provide a name. What's nice with this is that I notice the indentations are already there. So I've got a little less work that I need to worry about with this one. So that's looking good. I've got the name updated. Now, the other thing I need to be mindful of again is this type drop down. And I do need to make sure that I select milestone as my type there. Now notice with this is that when I switch to milestone, I've only got one option as far as the date is concerned. So a little bit different behavior depending upon what your selections are in the type screen there. Now for a due date for this, let's just say, okay, let's say my concept that we had before, once Tom's gone through his work on this task, we got a milestone date midway through the following month. And basically this is some kind of a luncheon. Hey, wouldn't it be great if I give this a description just so you can get a feel for that. Luncheon to discuss Tom's findings, essentially. I'll leave it at luncheon as my description. Now the question is there a budget dollar that needs to be tied to this milestone? Not necessarily. If this is going to be something along the lines of a luncheon where we're going out, we're going to have a nice big lunch, maybe I want to allot $200 for maybe myself, Tom, maybe other members of the management team are getting together to discuss Tom's findings there. Okay, so I've got a total budget allotted for this. I could assign a milestone date, assign users to this. I could assign Tom, myself. Again, it's the same type of an idea that I just showed you. So I'll just leave that blank and click Create. Okay, so the question now is, do I have any other milestones I need to build? Any other tasks? Maybe I forgot something. Well, the answer is nope, I'm good on the one initiative, one task, and one milestone. As soon as I click away from this item, you'll notice that this kind of auto-generated item here will disappear. So I'm just going to click on tasks to show that. And the next thing that I'm going to do is talk you through an example. Let's just say I've built up this initiative. Maybe a couple days have gone by and I've talked with upper management and they say, sorry, we thought we can give you $5,000 to work through this ad campaign, whatever it is that Tom was planning to do here. And they come back to me and they say, sorry, we've got to have that. You know, with the state of the world right now, we just can't afford to give you $5,000 for working through that ad campaign here. So they've cut it in half. So I'm going to go into the system here. And since I have not left this mode, so I'm still kind of in the editing mode, I could have, if I had clicked done, there would have been an option to edit this particular item. So because I had not worked my way out of that, I can just merely go back to it and just type over the value. Now, let's just again assume that a week had transpired here, and I had told Tom a week ago, hey, you've got $5,000 to work through this, and now all of a sudden I'm going into the system and chopping it in half. Well, I'm aware of it. I might have communicated that to Tom by email, by phone, in person, whatever, or I might not have, okay? So this might have been the only place where I could alert Tom to the fact that, hey, something drastic is occurring here. And what I want to show you here is down at the bottom right, there is an option called Notify Assigned Users and Groups of Changes. And basically, if you tick this box, and that's all you need to do is tick this box, make sure you have somebody defined as a user or a group here. And again, if you have a group, an alert would go out to multiple people that are potentially tied to that group. And as soon as I click save, an email alert would go out to Tom, alerting him of that fact. Now, since this is just a little for fun here in our webinar, I don't want to bother Tom right now with an alert of that change. I don't want him to get an email. I don't want him to get concerned. So I'll just click save and I'll leave it at that. All right, so I have successfully at this point halved the budget for that item. I have not alerted Tom to the fact of that change because I deselected the box there. Okay, so at this point now, I'm happy with the way this has been laid out. I've created the initiative, I created the task, I've created the milestone, I've even changed some things along the way here, and I'm now ready to click done at the bottom there. Now, some things I wanted to alert you to is that you'll notice everything's in gray right now because I haven't taken the time to provide a status update, or in this case, Tom will provide a status update. So in a minute, we'll see these things light up with a different color. But the first thing I just want to draw your attention to is there are some nice little features here that if you've gone in and you've defined a budget initially, later, like I showed you, go in and edit that to a different value, there is an alert that will show up here in the tool. Okay, so there is this triangle. If you hover over it, so maybe this, let's just picture Tom logging in, and he's got rights to see this initiative tree. And well, I didn't tick that box a few seconds ago. Well, Tom might log in and say, oh no, I see this triangle. Let me hover over it. And this would have been a great thing for him to be mindful of, is the fact that, hey, Frank just simply forgot to tick the box there. Let me see what's going on with this triangle. If I hover over it, I might see for the first time, oh no, Frank has gone in and have the budget on me from 5,000 to 2,500. All right, so this might be, Tom's place to call Frank, hey, did you really do this? Did we really lose half of our budget? And that might lead to a fun discussion there. But in any case, so something to keep in mind is that there are alerts that are available there if something changes. Okay, next thing I want to walk you through, let's switch over to the Tom persona. Okay, so right now I've logged in as Frank and we're looking at everything from Frank's world, but let's say, okay, I've logged in as Tom. And so Tom goes to this screen. If he's got permissions, he might have the same exact view that we're seeing on screen here. Now, as Tom, and let's say as the month of May is going on, well, a week has gone by now through the month of May, and Tom's ready to provide a status update, maybe to me. All right, so to me, Frank. So he can go into this status update option, and I'll walk you through how it's very simplistic here. There's an option called Add Status Update, and you click on that. And what you can do with this is you can provide or pick a certain date. So let's just say Tom was ready for this update 2 days ago, or the information that he's going to type in is as current as the 5th or the 6th, whatever it is. He could backdate his entry, okay? Now, if he's happy with the fact that it's defaulting to today's date and the numbers that he's about to load is as current as today's date, he can just leave that value of May 7th there. And the next question is well, what are these other entries here? And these are Tom's projections or feelings as far as where he is at on this particular task that he's been assigned to. And he's going to come in and he say, okay, as of May 7th, believe it or not, I am 50% of the way through what I need to do to complete this task. All right. So we'll notice that we're only a week into when this task technically started. We have a few weeks left in the month for Tom to do this work, but he's already saying he's 50% of the way done. So that's a good thing. So he's basically going to be ahead of schedule on this item. And that should light up in green up at this box in a minute. Now on the right, well, this might not be such good news, okay? So remember that little switch that we had before from 5,000 and Frank went in and chopped it down at 2,500. Well, Tom was merely operating for the first week of May thinking he's got 5,000 to work with, and he's just gone ahead and blown 2,000 of that already, all right? So maybe that was great at the time, but as of May 7th now, once we'll see here, once Frank has made this adjustment, well, this number is not going to be so great anymore, okay? Especially since we're only a week through the month of May, okay? So basically, again, we're just working through status updates, showing you how easy this is, and then Tom, as a last step, all he needs to do is click add here, all right? So once he does that, you'll see, as I promised, that these boxes up at the right have been populated with either green or red. I won't get too technical, but we have something called earned value management, an algorithm that will go ahead and take a look at the entries that Tom just put in, compare that to the entries that Frank had put in as far as defining when this is going to be started and ended, and the amount of budget that Tom has to work with. All right, so based on all that information here, we can see that, well, great, as I said before, Tom is actually way ahead of schedule. That's good. What's not so good anymore is this budget. And again, that's really not Tom's fault per se. It was Frank going in and basically having the budget on them there. Okay, so that gives you a feel for how you work through those entries here. Now, other things I just want to show you with this as far as what you can get into is the concept of a related item. And you'll see that there is a section called related item here at the task level. If I click milestone, you'll see that there's also the same exact section in the initiative level, okay? So you can choose to add a related item at any of the three or none of them, okay? The point is that I can add in something to relate this item back to. What does that mean? Typically what you're doing is you're relating it to a scorecard item, a objective, a measure, things of that nature. Typically one of those two things is the most common as far as what you'll get into there. So to show you that, it's very easy. All you need to do is click, again, you got to select where does it make the most sense to hook this up. And I'm just picking the top level initiative here. And I'll click add as the next step. So you see there's a whole bunch of things I can relate to this now, a dashboard, a strategy map, or again, typically the main thing that I'm selecting here is scorecard item. So I'll go ahead and click on that. Now the next question is where is the measure, and I'm going to hook this up to a measure, where is that connected to? On the left, you have the ability to pick a organizational structure. What is nice here is typically the measures are going to be connected in the same area or organizational structure level here. Right now I've got this called initiatives, but this might have been my marketing department level of my structure, let's say. So typically it's the same level here. If not a big deal, you can just go ahead and select the appropriate location for that measure. It's not locked into being in the same world. You just got to go ahead and find wherever that might be if it's not at the same location. Okay, so pick the right org level, and then on the right-hand side, what is the actual place that I want to connect this to? Well, I'm going to hook this up to that add clicks measure that we were focusing in on before. Okay, so all you need to do here is click on that and then select add. And that will create an item down at the bottom there. All right, so that's just that simple. Now the question is, what did that accomplish? And if I go to the bottom here and click on that, you'll notice that I've got a nice direct link to that add clicks measure, and this is the place that we started this webinar about 35 minutes ago, okay? So this takes you back to that location there. What you'll also notice is that there is a backlink that has been defined here for the initiative that will take me back to the initiatives panel. I could go ahead and click on that. That will take me back to that panel, but I'm actually done with my work in that panel, so I'll just stay right here. All right. So another item that I showed you before, so remember before we started by looking at the measure ad clicks, and then we got to walking through different examples. And one of the things that we looked at was a initiative report. And that was under this charts and reports section here. So what I'm going to do is walk you through, and you'll see how simple this is to build this up since it's an out of the box report here. So all you need to do is know where it is. It's under charts and reports. The next thing that you need to do is click new report to build it from scratch. You'll notice that there's a whole bunch of canned reports on the left. This is all measure or KPI related. Not so good when we want to work with initiatives right now. So none of these are applicable. The only one that is really applicable on the initiative side here, unless you create a link of an initiative to a measure, which I'll actually end our presentation to. So there could be some cases where these come into play here. But for now, I have not defined an initiative as a measure. So the only thing that's going to be appropriate for me to build is an initiatives report. So the top item on the right-hand side. So I'll click on that and select next. So under here, the next thing I need to do is deal with the current filters section. You'll notice that it's blank by default. I do need to click add, and that will get me into this option called filter on. And you'll see there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can get into with this. And for some reason, my scroll is not behaving nicely there. There we go. What I'm looking for is specific initiative items. And that's it. So I'm going to select that item called specific initiative items and click next to get to the next screen there. And this next screen is going to be similar to what I just showed you a minute ago with the related items. It's a similar type of behavior. Okay, what initiative do you want to add to this report is what we're dealing with now. And the question is what org structure does it sit on? And I'm happy with the default there. And then we can take a look here. I've got a couple different options here. I can bring across a report that captures all initiatives. So I've got one that I had built prior to the webinar, which is this one. And I've got one that I built during the webinar. So this was the one that I kept nice and generic there. And the question is, do I want all those or do I just want one of the two? So in actuality right now, this is basically nothing, okay? So we just built this up, it's generic, it was just kind of illustrating the concept. I haven't really plugged many numbers into that yet. So what I'm gonna do is just pick on the one item that we had worked through, let's say in our fictitious example earlier in the year. So I'll go ahead and click on that one item. I can pick and choose any of these items here, but if I want the parent and everything under it, I'm gonna click the top level and click add. And what you'll see is that comes across as the selection up at the top. I do have the ability to go in and select more things if I wanted to, or I could delete this and start over essentially if I made a mistake. But for now, I'm happy with my selections on screen, and I'll go ahead and click done. Okay, so I've applied a filter. I've selected which initiative I want on the report, and I click finish. And that's it. So it's just that simple. The columns with the reports are canned. They're basically what you see is what you get with this. But basically all the information that are applicable from that initiative's world are available to you. The main columns are which are probably going to be stuff like the budget spent to date and the percent complete columns. All right, so if you're happy with this report, the last thing that you need to do is click save at the bottom right, give it a name. I'm just going to call this training and click save. All right, so that's our report example. Now, last but not least, I created a second dashboard that I walked you through before. So let's go ahead and take a look at this dashboard called Increase Ad Clicks. All right, so this one had a graph up at the top with a table. This is tucked away, easy to miss. Down at the bottom, I've got a timeline widget, and then in the bottom right, I've got a notes widget. And the question is, well, that's great. How did you do it? Okay, so again, you'll see similar steps, and you'll notice that what's so great about the product is you'll see similar things in the same exact spot, maybe just named differently. All right, so previously with charts and reports, we went to new report. Now within a dashboards world, it's called same spot, new dashboard. All right, what I need to do here, and you'll notice the behavior is different depending upon what you're doing. That last example with the reports, I immediately got taken into a wizard where I had to pick a filter and things of that nature. With dashboards, what I'm looking to do is provide the name of the dashboard. I'm just going to call this training and then select create. And that will get you down into a location where you can now building on that dashboard. So the first thing that I did here, and the main thing that you're going to be working with this is the plus icon. If you hover over it, it says the words add widget. You're going to see me do this 3 times now. So I'm going to click on that first time around. And the question is, how'd you get that chart? Well, lo and behold, I clicked an option called chart. So we go ahead and click on that. And then the next question is, well, what are you looking to chart? And we're looking to chart the ad clicks measure. So within this tree here, I'm going to start by selecting scorecard item. Same exact concept. Where does it sit on the org structure? It's going to be under initiatives, which is our default. Great. And now the question is, well, where's the measure? Again, same exact location. You've seen me do this a few times now. I'm going to click on ad clicks and select add. So you'll notice that behind the scenes here, something has happened. I can click away from that prior panel here, and I can start resizing this graph as we go here. I can play around with how this looks, lock it into a certain period of time. And right now I'm actually quite content with what this displays here. So going back to May of 2019 of last year. Now, what I had added on before was a table. And you'll notice that, well, where's the table? And I'll show you how you can go ahead and bring that across here. What you need to do is click on the chart. Then up at the top right, there is this settings or edit option, whatever you want to call that there, the gear icon essentially. And you'll notice that there is an option called the show table that is turned off by default. So all I need to do is enable that, and I'll bring this across here. I can resize this and I'll play around with this in a second, but I just wanted to bring that across before I lose sight of that table needing to be there. Now, so I've got this table going here. I can manipulate that more in a second. But actually what I want to do is go back to the chart and manipulate this a little bit. So in this example here, all I've got right now is the ad clicks actual value being charted. And that you might be happy with that. But in addition to what I had added on that prior example is I included a line for the goal. All right, so if you want to incorporate both of those two things onto the chart, what you need to do is create the chart first, like I did, and then you need to go back to it and edit it. All right, so I just did one, I could have done either step first. I could have shown the table after I did this step, or I could have added the table first, like I did, and then go back in and manipulate the chart by clicking edit chart there. Okay, so the question is, well, how'd you add the goal? And there's an option called add series right at the middle here. I'm gonna go ahead and click on that. Now the question is, well, what are you doing? I am looking to bring across, I'm happy with ad clicks, which notice how it's defaulting to that because I've brought that one across already. Now the question is, well, I'm not going to add the actual value again for the ad clicks. What I'm going to do is maybe change that to show something else. And you'll notice tucked away at the bottom left, I can switch that default of actual value to something else. In this case, I'm going to select goal. All right, that's it. I need to, at this point now, click done. Now, a couple things here is you'll notice that as soon as I introduce a second measure or KPI onto this chart, I have the ability to manipulate the color. And typically with goal, if I was bringing across red flag values, I would have introduced the red value. If I'm bringing goal across, well, wouldn't it be great to change that to a dark green? So I do have the ability to manipulate the color. Notice ad clicks. I actually had that set to navy blue in that prior example, and that's what it's defaulting to right now. If that needed to change, what I would need to do is click on this item to kind of make that the driving value. And then you'll see the exact same options on screen here. And I would go in and manipulate that to something else. It's actually set to exactly the color that I want it to be right now. So at this point, I'm just going to click done. All right, so from here now, what I'm going to do is resize this chart. You see that the reason I brought across this table is to identify for the user really a key column here, which is the series value. So the green value is my goal, that line here, and then the navy blue is going to be my actual value. Now the question is, and I'm going to run out of real estate here, and I could either resize this if I wanted to. I can go on and on, a bit more to the right. I actually don't want to do that in this example. This does my feelings at this time. What I could do is manipulate this and turn off a couple of options here. And in the prior example on that prior dashboard, I turned off organization and I turned off the repeating values by month there at the end by turning off series data. All right, so you'll see that this box has essentially become just a legend at this point. So I can chop this down and resize this a bit to look something like this there. Okay, so basically we're charting the ad clicks measure twice, once as a goal, once as an actual value. All right, so next step is how did I get the timeline widget down brought across? So again, it's the plus icon, add widget. This time around, I'm selecting from my list of 10, previously selected chart. Now I'm selecting timeline. Go ahead and click on that. You'll see the lovely repeating behavior, which is really nice here. You'll see that it's the same type of selection criteria that I'm doing. What's your org? I'm happy with initiatives on the left. Of my initiatives, let's just focus on that one that we put through earlier in the year. Do I want to focus on just a task or a particular milestone? Nope. I want to select the entire initiative. I'll click add at that level there. And that's it. So from here, I can now drag this thing down. I can manipulate it, resize it, reposition this, and play along with those tricks that I showed you before, where maybe I want this timeline widget to stop at a certain point where it's in sync with the chart above. All right, so I'll just kind of position that between February and January there. So that's the timeline widget, pretty simple to add there. And then last but not least, I added a note at the bottom right. And how did I do that? I went to the plus icon here. This time for my list of 10, I selected notes. The question is where was the note I added? And I didn't show you this piece of this, but just for the sake of time here, except the fact that at the ad clicks measure, I had gone in earlier in the month of May and basically patted ourselves on the back, okay, with the note. So on this measure here, ad clicks, that's the one that's got that note, and I'm gonna go ahead and click on it and click add. And you'll see that I've got a note display that may or may not be exactly what you want it to look like. All right, so I can manipulate this. I love getting everything sized perfectly and aligned perfectly. Some really nice tools here to get this nicely in sync. And you can do that with the top and the bottom. You'll notice that if I drag this table over just a bit to the right, once it's perfectly in alignment with the one on the right, on the bottom there, it'll give you a little visual line to say, yep, you're perfectly in sync. And the same is true up at the top. You'll see a line showing when I'm perfectly in vertical alignment with the graph. Now the question with this note at the bottom, am I happy with the way this is coming across here? And you might say, yeah, that's great. I have the ability as a user to maybe, if I have the capability to comment as a communication user or a power user, maybe I like having this add note sitting out there. I'm just going to show you a different display of this so that you're aware that if I go to the edit option here, there's an option to change the display as value. And you'll see our default is abbreviated titles, and I can change that to an option called full notes. And that will give that same exact look that I had on that prior dashboard there. All right, so here I can see the note in its entirety. There's Frank patting everybody on the back for the wonderful initiative that's been in place since the beginning of January. And ever since then, our trend used to be going down and now it's going way up. So yay to us. All right, so with that, if I'm happy with the way this looks, I now need to make sure I save the dashboard. So I had ready to find the name of training before. I just need to update those changes along the way. Good idea to save as you go. There might be some things that you add in that you like, some things that you don't. So along the way, I typically will save a bit more often than I just did there, but or you can just wait till the end, and if you've only got a couple changes, that's fine as well. Okay, so once you're done with that, what I'm going to do is click done to get out of that kind of editing mode here, and just kind of get a feel for how this dashboard's coming across. I have the ability to add in custom images and logos to make this look even better, but I'll leave that for another day, and maybe, of course, items that we've covered in earlier sessions of our webinar series as well. I'm sure Tom covered that last week with dashboards. Okay, so that concludes today's webinar. I'll just quickly switch back over to the PowerPoint. Let me put that back on screen here. I'll bring back my, this slide here that's got my email and our learn at spiderstrategies.com email as well. So hopefully you all found that to be informative. A recording of the session will be made available later this week. Our next session is going to be next Thursday, May 14th. It'll be led by Tom Keating, and he'll be covering the topic of tips and tricks. So I thank you for coming, and we hope to see you all again next week. Take care.